most important thing that's necessary, it's most basic and essential in decision making, is accurate and unbiased information. The corporation that is the source of the data since 2012 for the Gorham connector, HNTB, has a financial stake in this project moving forward. There's been numerous false claims made since the Gorham connector input session. And I'm going to list a few of them in the short time that I have. The first, the traffic is at or above pre-COVID levels. And HNTB argued with my neighbor over this and presented data that they said proved that that was a fact. They had 3 sites, MDOT sites, that they said showed that the corridor traffic was above what it was pre-COVID. It was cherry picked. The first site on Route 25 was one site in downtown Westbrook. There are 5 sites, MDOT sites, between Westbrook and Gorham, and every single one of those sites showed a significant decrease in traffic between 2019 and 2022. They had no data from 114 because on 114, all 8 MDOT traffic sites between the Turnpike and the Gorham bypass showed significant decrease in traffic between 2019 and 2022. The only Route 22 data that they showed was from west of the overlap towards Buxton. On Route 22, between the Turnpike and the end of the overlap, there are 9 sites, and every single one of them showed a significant decrease in traffic between 2019 and 2022. The other claim that there's significant traffic growth that is only getting worse is also false. All you have to do is look at Maine Department of Transportation data. As I've shown you, their historical traffic counts show that traffic on 114, 22, on the overlap, all peaked 10 to 20 years ago, unrelated to COVID. On average, traffic is down 13% on this corridor since that time. And that mirrors the growth in the region. Buxton, Standish, and Gorham, the principal communities that are feeding this corridor, while they grew significantly during that time, all that growth was in the 65-plus demographic. Bonnie Eagle School District enrollment peaked in 2007 and is down 20% in that district from that peak enrollment in 2007. The other false claim that we were told at the Gorham input session was that the cost of this turnpike would be, and I quote, north of 200 million or maybe around 250 million. Well, 1, that was from 2019, and 2, we have a document here that proves that you already knew that the cost you had projected out was 313 million. That's not north of 200 million, that's north of 300 million. For months on the MTA website and at that Gorham input session, HNTB claimed that there was an updated 2023 traffic and revenue study that confirmed the Gorham connector's viability and necessity. And we come to learn through a Freedom of Information Act request that that study simply doesn't exist. Although over $1 million has been expended by the MTA since 2019 on that feasibility study. And the only information, when I asked for any other information that the MTA might be in possession of, I was told there was nothing except a simple MDOT traffic count. That's false. There absolutely has to be. If you made the decision to move forward with this in February, you must have received some information from HNTB claiming that this was viable still. Supposedly, there's been a rigorous analysis of all feasible alternatives, yet the only supposedly feasible alternative that's been given is turning all of 114 from 112 down to the Payne Road into a 5-lane, 76-foot wide monstrosity that's equivalent to 295. Parts of that 114 corridor have AADTs of under 12,000. There's no possible need for something like that, especially given that this corridor is declining in traffic. There are reasonable ways to fix this corridor, to improve this corridor, that don't involve any eminent domain, don't involve that drastic widening. And that hasn't been communicated to the board. This is not just deceit and manipulation, it's fraud. It's fraud for us property owners that this proposal would be taking our land because it's being done under false pretenses. It's fraud for the MTA because it's a boondoggle that is not going to be profitable. But HNTP is telling you the information they want you to hear so that you go forward. It's fraud against the customers of the Turnpike who would have to endure significant toll increases to make this project viable. And it's fraud to the public of the state because, as you all know, the Turnpike was supposed to be turned over, was supposed to become property of the state once all the bonds had been paid off. That happened in 1981, and the bargain that was struck was that 25% of operating revenues from the Turnpike would be given to the state. That turned into now a rule that 5% of the revenues be given to Maine Department of Transportation for Department of Transportation projects. And we come to find out that the entire cost of the Gorham Connector, all land acquisition, all construction, all planning and design, the MTA is purporting to be a Department of Transportation project to fulfill their obligations under MRSA 23 MRSA 1961. You're planning on building a profit-producing, a surplus-producing, purportedly, connector for the Turnpike, and you're saying that that's an MDOT project under those rules. There's no possible way that that was the legislature's intention behind that. I have no doubt in my mind that this Turnpike will never get built as long as we as citizens continue to fight it. The fundamentals are so flawed. There's a proposal to appropriate a significant amount of our land, bulldoze a dozen of our neighbors' homes, destroy a historical landmark and community resource, and one of the last vestiges of Scarborough's agricultural heritage, and its construction and vast expansion of impervious surface would have enormous impact on our local environment, including red brook, wetlands, wildlife habitats, and the major North Scarborough aquifer that would be skirted. When this project is delayed for further internal review, it's not hurting HNTB, it's not hurting the MTA. More consultants get paid, and the MTA can just raise tolls to keep this bureaucracy rolling. But it hurts us citizens so much. The time we're investing in this fight is time that we're losing that we could be spending with family, or with our community, or working in other ways to make this world a better place. I try not to have anger to go through all this, but I hate that I'm being robbed of so much in my life in order to fight something that is fundamentally so ridiculous and against all the values that we profess. It's infuriating to be in this position, and the idea that the opposition to this, as Mr. Mills stated, was because an organization is trying to make money off it. And it's us as citizens that have been carrying the brunt of just trying to get accurate information out there, is deeply, deeply insulting. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Liz Trice. I'm a resident, and no one's paying me to be here. And also, there's other many things that I'd rather be doing with my family, and I'm not feeling well today, but I feel that this is very important. First of all, I just wanted to appreciate, sitting in these meetings. I wanted to appreciate the good work that you guys do and the intentions to keep people safe on our existing roads and in good condition, and also, trying to build a good employee culture and keeping positivity and treating employees well and all of that. So I just wanted to thank you for that good work. I don't believe that the Gorham Connector is a solution, or that really building more highways is a solution at all to any of the problems that we're facing. And it's certainly not a destiny. We have processes for how to handle regional planning, and they've been weak in Maine. In the earlier part of the last century, we started investing in highways as an economic development tool, and immediately people said, oh my God, there's traffic. We don't like that. And then they started clamping down on building housing in the areas that were most impacted, first with Portland and then with other service centers. And now we have a housing crisis. So I believe in letting us build housing where people want to live, so that the restaurant worker doesn't have to live in Hollis and drive an hour each way. There's a lot of other things we can do, and our state, in part because of home rule, has struggled with regional planning, and I know a lot about that history. But just to say, in its cultural issues, it feels luxurious and wonderful to have a big house in the country and drive places, but then it becomes a severe burden upon our families when you can't get anywhere without driving an hour, and that depletes our public coffers and our individual wallets in ways that are not sustainable. And I'm worried that as Maine grows and as we attract more people here, more and more people who have been here for generations are going to be forced to the margins, and we're going to lose what we care about in terms of our farms and our forests and our wetlands. And it's just going to be a mess of highways everywhere. And we all love being able to get, south to the main through the main turnpike to get out of the state. But I don't think we want to live in what feels like northern New Jersey with just highways everywhere. We have processes for traffic in Greater Portland. We have GBCOG and PACs, our regional planning entities. We have a federally mandated congestion mitigation process. Both of which have made plans that do not suggest a highway. And we have not been taking their suggestions, and I think we need to do that and put more force behind their plans and actually implement them. We have the Sensible Transportation Act, which was passed very seriously to say we need to look at all alternatives to building new roads. And we need to take that seriously. We have the Maine Won't Wait climate plan, which number one says we need to reduce vehicle miles traveled. I realize this is going to be require a lot of public conversation and change, but I suggest that we put whatever energy and money we have into figuring out how to make those changes rather than using taxpayer money to change people's, to manipulate people to thinking we should have more highways. Like, that doesn't make sense to me at all. We have the Mass Rapid Transit study, and we have public input sessions that are required. And at the public input session that you hosted, it was like 97% people saying, we don't want this highway. And so it's very distressing to hear the group say, we're going to spend millions more dollars on a public campaign to change people's minds. Like, that's not what public input is about. I don't think you did a poor job explaining to the public what you intended to do. I think you put it very straightforward, and everyone said no. And the people organizing against this connector, people understand very well what it is, and understand very well how modern engineering thinks and works. And we've got a more complex issue on our hands here. And honestly, I don't think the Maine Turnpike should be involved in this at all. I think it should go back to PACS and back to the Maine Department of Transportation. There should be a full stop. I appreciate that it was taken out of the 4-year plan, but I think there should be a full stop acquisitions, stop spending money on studies, leave that to PACS and MDOT, stop spending taxpayer money to change voters' minds. That's like very weird and sort of vibes like a non-accountable organization, which MTA is accused of being, and I just don't think you want to continue that perception or vibe. And not to say this is going to happen eventually and we're going to delay, because that's not fair to taxpayers to keep spending money on something that has gotten a clear no. And it's not fair to landowners. You know, if you say, well, we'll do this in 10 years once opposition dies down or something, you know, that's 10 years of serious stress and anxiety on the landowners and everyone who lives in that area. I mean, I've been studying the sound pollution science, and highway noise can travel 30 miles when you have, you know, a truck going 75 miles an hour and using, you know, the brakes that they use. And it's like, so you're talking about impacting a huge region that right now wants to live quietly and enjoy. When you ask people what they love about living in Scarborough or Gorham, they'll probably say, oh, it's so quiet. I love hearing crickets at night. You know, it just completely destroys that. And it's crazy to think that we live in a society where we say, well, if I just drive a little bit faster, a little bit farther, I'll get to that place that I don't hear traffic, you know? It's like definition of insanity. So I would like to see the process turn back over to PACS and MDOT for Turnpike Authority to politely back up and out of the process. And for PACS and MDOT, I'd like to see the signal coordination and roundabouts that have already been recommended, add bike lanes and sidewalks, participate maybe even in that larger conversation of what does the future look like where we're trying to reduce vehicle miles traveled. How can the Turnpike Authority help with Maine Can't Wait? How can the Turnpike help with sound concerns? How can the Turnpike help? Maybe we can invest, you know, $40 million in reducing the sound that the highway creates. That would be amazing and would make Maine Turnpike Authority be seen as a hero instead of like a necessary evil destroying their quality of life. That's all I have. I'm happy to chat with anybody one-on-one. Thank you for the work you're doing, and I really believe you guys can come out on top, being the good guys on this, but it really means backing out of this particular part and saying, how do we help with the bigger effort of where we need to go as a society to create quieter, walkable villages where the highway is just one part of the system, and make it quieter. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, Chairman Waltham, esteemed directors of the Maine Turnpike Board of Directors. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity again to address you. My name is Warren Knight, and I represent Smiling Hill Farm out there at 781 County Road, and I've spoken to you before. And before I start, I'd like to ask the chairman, point of order. I listened in on one of your meetings previously, where somebody stood up and was addressing, and I'm going to talk about the Gorham Connector. And the chairman interrupted him and said it would be more appropriate for his remarks to be made in front of the public input session, which was scheduled and canceled, and scheduled and canceled. And so I would ask that you accept my remarks and I be allowed to deliver them unmolested. And let's start with that process. We had a meeting in March in Gorham, and I thought it went very well. It was successful. The public was engaged. The public turned out. The public was involved. And then there was a subsequent meeting scheduled for Scarborough, for Portland, for South Portland, for Westbrook. Those never happened. They kept getting canceled. And finally we hear that they're not even on the docket anymore. They're not even scheduled. And I wonder why. I wonder why. And then I was fortunate enough, someone recommended a book to me, and it's called Killed by a Traffic Engineer. And if you're not familiar with it, I would recommend it highly to anyone who's involved in the transportation industry. It's written by a traffic engineer who's now a PhD in Colorado and teaches, and it is illuminating. Before, my interest in this project was rather parochial. It's going to divide our family farm in two, and frankly, not to be overly dramatic, put us out of business. But after reading this book, I am converted, I guess, that we have additional problems to address. One of the points that this gentleman makes, the doctor made in the book, was talking about the public input session in transportation, how important that was, and how it's treated by transportation authorities and traffic engineers. They even have an acronym for it. It's called DAD, D-A-D. It stands for decide what you're going to do, announce to the public what you're going to do, and then defend what you're going to do. Because the public input should not be taken. It's perfunctory to have these meetings, these input sessions with the public. The public doesn't know what they want. The public shouldn't be allowed to decide how to settle these issues. You're a traffic engineer. You get to decide, you announce, and then you defend your decision. And then you just push it through. And as I said earlier when I made my remarks, you don't have a PR problem. But you think you do. And Mr. Mills' comments earlier reiterated that you think if you can convince more people that this is a good idea, that they will jump on board. I don't think so. I think this is our Dickie Lincoln moment in highway transportation for the state of Maine. I really do. And some of you are old enough to remember that. And there were some people who ended up on the wrong side of that argument and have been swept away to the dustbin of history. That was very controversial in its time. Very controversial. And rightfully so. And Maine made the right decision in that case. And we have the opportunity to make the right decision here. I also want to talk about sunk costs. You've spent a lot of money on this. You spent a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of resources. And I think it was Thomas Edison who once said, when he was asked about all of the times he failed I successfully discovered 1,000 ways not to make light bulb. And I want the MTA to look at this money gone, sunk costs, as you successfully discovered a way not to fix the problem out there. That's what the Gorham Connector is. And unfortunately, that money's gone. And the sunk cost cognitive bias that causes people to stand in front of a slot machine and continually pull that lever, thinking they're going to make the money back that they spent days, months, years ago. It's an addiction. I think this project, frankly, is a zombie project, and it's walking around only because it got inflated with a lot of money and a lot of people's time and resources, and nobody has put it out of its misery yet. It needs to be killed dead, and we need to gather up what resources we have accumulated and solve this issue. And Mr. Moody was right. When he gave I couldn't believe it. I thought traffic would go up year after year. I've seen population growth. I think population growth in the state of Maine, the census in that area is about 6%. I want to say 6% from 2010 to 2020. You would expect to see a corresponding rise in traffic. We have not. It has either remained flat or it has gone down. One of the things the doctor talks about here is when you design a highway, you design it for 20 years in advance. And how do you design a highway? You project 20 years in advance. And so and there's a rule of thumb for highway engineers. They say about 3% or 3.2 to make it more technical. That you should increase yearly traffic volume and therefore design a highway at 3% increases over a 20-year period, and then design your highway for that. If we had done that in 2000, we'd have a highway that would be even less used. Less used. So, thank you again for allowing me to speak to you. Please make the